curious to me is if you look at recent polls that have come out and just sort of how things are moving, it looks like there may be a contingent of, because of course we can't separate those races from the Senate race that's on the same ballot. And so you have Senator Warnock facing Republican candidate Herschel Walker. And I think it's interesting that you may have some Warnock Kemp voters, right, in places. However, what I think may be more interesting is you may have some Kemp voters who do not vote in the Senate race. And so it may be difficult to sort of use either of those races to sort of hedge other races. But in terms of the down ballot races, one of the problems that Georgia Democrats face as a result of being out of power as long as they have, and that you indicated it's been some time since there's been a statewide elected Democrat in a constitutional office, is that in these races, very few people actually know what a lot of these offices do. And so the result is that people vote on incumbency and they vote on name recognition. And if they don't recognize the name, then they see, well, who has, am I a Republican or am I a Democrat? I'm going to vote for that office. So if you are running as an incumbent governor, you want to run for re-election during a cycle when the opposing party has the presidency. So Brian Kemp has that in his favor. The other thing to think about is, what are the economic conditions of the state? What are the budgetary conditions? And as we pointed out a moment ago, and with the economic development packages that have been coming out, as well as state budgets, it looks like you couldn't ask for a better environment for Governor Kemp to run for re-election. So the question then becomes, what other salient issues are being talked about politically that might affect people's attitudes on various, and one of those things would be the Dobbs decision, which has allowed abortion politics to become front and center, whereas abortion politics might have been considered sort of a latent issue, it was important. There were single issue voters for sure, and it was important to a lot of voters, but fundamentally it was a status quo because we'd had Roe v. Wade for some time. And though the state would pass laws like the heartbeat bill and things would change to some degree, the fundamental nature of the right to privacy still held. And so couldn't motivate people in the way that it can maybe perhaps now in the wake of the Dobbs decision. Everybody in Georgia, particularly of voting age, more or less, particularly the sweet spot of voter age, which is like 35 to 55, they know who Herschel Walker is. And their memories of Herschel Walker are tied to something very emotionally positive, right? Georgia football, winning national championships, and all that kind of stuff. That is, as I said a minute ago, worth its weight in gold. You can't buy that politically. There's nothing you can do to get that emotional attachment to somebody, and he's got it. The issue for Herschel Walker, of course, is that he is not a very polished candidate, and he's sort of learning on the fly, if you will. And I think that the thing that any Republican candidate could do in this cycle, no matter where you're running, is just make sure you keep an R beside your name. That's number one, because on balance, that's going to be more beneficial than being a Democrat in a midterm election with a Democratic president. On the other hand, we make these assumptions about the relative strength or weakness of parties in midterms based on the assumption that both candidates are sort of functioning at basically an equal level, that they're both good quality candidates. So the Walker campaign, again, voters aren't paying a great deal of attention until after Labor Day. So the benefit they have is that they have some more time to sort of get their sea legs, and to the extent they feel like they need to right the ship, they still can. But the crucial thing, I think, in the fall, when people start to pay attention, are some of these Warnock attacks about Herschel Walker's trustworthiness going to hold water for folks? Are people going to begin to think more deeply about the policy aspects of the Walker campaign and things like that? And similarly, do they like the direction that Senator Warnock has taken as a senator? And that's an equally important consideration. So the Walker campaign, it probably is not in a bad spot because Georgia really is a 50-50 state. And so provided that they can, maintain a level of professionalism and the candidate can be presented and sort of demonstrates the capacity to hold the office, then I think that you would think that it's still going to be 50-50. It's going to be very close on election day. Very, very close. I can't imagine either of those candidates winning much more than 51% of the vote, if that.